Welcome to That Japanese Thing. Today we're going to be talking about Ponpopo. Is that how you say it?
Tanpopo.
Tanpopo. Right,
Tanpopo.
Tanpopo. It's actually a word I hadn't really heard before, but now that I've heard it, like it popped up in all of the Japanese shows I was watching. Like
Oh,
this
really?
week. Yeah.
Dandelion.
It's strange how words do that. Yeah, it means dandelion.
Nice. Nice.
Tanpopo is the name of the movie we'll be talking about this week. My co-hosts are Dylan and Yesh. Welcome, guys.
Hey there.
Hello.
Before we get into that, we're just going to address a few minor stories that we want to talk about as well. To begin us off, we'll go with Yesh.
Sure. So the first story I wanted to talk about is that Toshiba, previously a giant electronics company and one I'm surprised to report this on, has begun the process of dismantling. Now, they are not at the situation where they are forced to dismantle right now, but if they do not receive outside investment on a large scale, and they have approached Blackstone and CVC Capital for funding, they are going to have to dismantle and disband. Toshiba has been one of the largest electronics and technology companies in the world, basically. I mean, it's not gargantuan, but it has been. Its presence has been felt for a very long time.
They're major in terms of electronic components.
Well, they were, right? They're the inventors of RAM, basically. Computer memory.
They're a laptop company, their memory company, their hard drives and stuff have been very popular until very recently, I would feel. But since apparently 2017, they have been selling off branches of their company.
Yes, yeah.
They had to avoid filing for bankruptcy in 2020. And now in 2022, they are being forced to prepare for dismantling.
It's quite sad. I mean, I used to like Toshiba laptops back in.
I was quite positive about Toshiba hard drives, Toshiba RAM.
Yeah, they weren't ever like the best, I think, out of any category, but they always were like a good compromise. And it's kind of just sad to see a company go that way.
To see something so significant go, yes.
And it's really only because of kind of a lack of innovation. I feel it's nothing fundamentally bad.
Some people are pointing out to the fact that management decided to start selling off branches of the company.
Yes.
Even while the company was profitable technically. The idea was that if they trimmed down the size, they could perhaps improve profits for investors. But the problem with trimming down those branches is they cut out any part of innovation. So one of the first things they sold was their laptop branch. And I think that's ridiculous. One of the most famous things Toshiba had going for it was its laptop branch, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, good laptops.
And then my second news story, sorry, I'm just going to rush through it because we're doing a cut down news episode, is one Tokyo ward has revealed that 1 in 76 members of its residencies are hikikomori.
Hikikomori.
Hikikomori, correct. 1 in 76 people living in Tokyo's Edogawa ward are that, and so that ward...
1 in 6.
1 in 76.
1 in 76. Okay, sorry.
In the age groups between their 30s and their 50s, have been revealed to be Sorry, I mispronounced it, and now I'm nervous about saying it.
Recluses would be the word in English. That is
in
closest.
English, correct.
Yeah.
So they handed out a survey across Tokyo, not just in this ward, obviously. And they had hikikomori as one of the options available for your current status. And 1.76%, or 1 in 76, people of this particular ward labeled themselves or were labeled by family members as hikikomori.
Yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon, and it doesn't just happen in Japan. And it's probably increased during the pandemic as well, I imagine.
Quite significantly,
Quite significantly. It used to be about 5% of the population, apparently, would be considered that sort of person. But that's a significant increase.
An unusual concentration in this particular ward. So they're saying it's 20% higher. So they're saying 1.72% of this ward.
Okay, that's
self-reporting or family reporting.
actually
as
not
people
that
know
bad.
it. It's not that bad,
Yeah.
but for Tokyo in particular, it's 20% higher than Tokyo gets.
It's a weird one to be in such a major city and then also not go outside.
Never
I
willing
think
to
that's the
leave,
strange
yeah.
thing. It's more of like a suburbs kind of thing, generally.
The Cabinet Office has said that they are planning on increasing funding by 11% for job hunting and socialization projects in
Right.
that ward.
Yeah, no, it's a problem. It's a sort of a psychological problem, but I'm not sure it's something you can do anything about, to be perfectly honest.
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, those are my 2 stories.
Dylan, what do you got for us?
Nice. Well, it's the news broke out on Monday. It was announced. Berserk's going to continue. The manga is going to continue and hopefully reach a conclusion of its arc.
Is Douglas Adams going to? Sorry, it's not Douglas Adams.
Douglas Adams.
Is,
No, I don't think
is,
Douglas
is,
Adams
is
is gonna write.
Ian Colfer going to finish the novel? That's what I was going for there?
Yeah, it does happen in literature quite often. Where the Dune saga is like a good example of that.
Wheel of Time, yeah.
Yeah. But in this case, so as you know, Kentaro Miura was the original author. He very unexpectedly passed away recently, unfortunately.
Yes.
And the manga was left unconcluded. But he did have a colleague of his that he treated as a confidant. This is Koji Mori. He was a childhood friend of his, and he apparently spoke to him quite a lot about the future intended arcs and how he envisaged the ending to be. So Koji Mori has, I think, recently made a deal with the publisher for Berserk, which is Young Animal, to aid and assist them in finalizing the series, or continuing and hopefully finalizing the series, with the help of Miura's assistant as well. So I think that they're handling this very well. So Koji Mori has said that he's not going to provide any more input than what was disclosed to him. So I think he's going to leave some of the fleshing out to Miura's assistants and simply sort of put the definitive stages that they discussed down on the table. So I'm actually quite excited that we're going to see where this goes, and it's also quite a nice sort of a the last words being conveyed. It's a nice way of honoring the memory of the.
I'm sure a lot of people will be really happy to know that they'll at least get some sort of conclusion to Berserk, and that it's being handled in a relatively good way. It's not just being handed to some stranger, I guess.
With the intention of continuing it on for the next 4 to 6 years.
Yes.
As well.
It definitely doesn't feel like it's like a money grabbing exercise. Obviously there are profit motivations within this, but it doesn't feel like it's just going to be a sort of a perversion to consumerism that often happens with IP.
Okay, I just want to mention a couple of things. One of them is a newsish story, is that there is a ad currently. There's 3 30-second ads currently for a new Dragon Ball Super movie called Superhero, which I don't know anything about, and these ads are the only thing that really exist about it. But it looks like maybe Piccolo is dressing up as like a superhero, which could be the coolest thing that has ever happened in like these sort of side story kind of elements of Dragon Ball. And I just kind of hope it's something like that and not just some generic Dragon Ball movie. The last 3 Dragon Ball movies have been pretty good. So I have high hopes, especially the what was it? There was the Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods. I think that was a really good one. I mean that came out a while ago now,
Yes, that's my problem.
And I mean, the one after that was not fantastic, but had some good stuff in it. And but the Burley one, what was it called? Was it just called Burley?
I think it was just called The Return of Broly or
Something
something like
like
that.
that, right? That was good. It was obviously a Dragon Ball Super one, so it was like more light-hearted than you often get with Dragon Ball movies. But yeah, it had. I think everyone's going to compare it to the old Broly movie, right? Which was that kind of hard rock kind of movie. But I enjoyed it. And if we get like a Great Saiyaman movie, which I kind of hope this is what this is going to be, but it's definitely not going to be that.
I think it
That
is
would be
going to be
amazing.
Saiyaman-ish. Because I think the beginning half of the movie is definitely going to be that Gohan is unable to do the Saiyaman thing because of XYZ. Probably family stuff. And therefore Piccolo has to pick up the mantle because Piccolo is really Gohan's father, let's be honest.
Yeah, it's true.
So watching Piccolo get into it and then maybe actually enjoying it and being embarrassed about enjoying it might be the best thing we'll get out of this movie.
I guess one of the funnier things is like Piccolo is what 5 years older than Gohan. Is also the strange age gap there.
Well, I mean, he absorbed Kami again, so
Yeah.
he's now the original Namek again.
But the poster is a bunch of like Super Sentai kind of looking characters attacking Gohan and Piccolo.
Hmm.
And Gohan's wearing his Piccolo kind of
Um,
outfit.
in the last movie that came out for Dragon Ball, Captain Ginyu came back.
That's true. I hadn't considered
So
that.
the Ginyu Force and their Sentais, like literally the inspiration for Gohan becoming a Sentai hero is that when he was a kid, he saw the Ginyu Force and thought they were super cool.
That's true. And
So the literal inspiration behind his hero facing off against his dad pretending to be that hero might be the best showdown we get in Dragon Ball for a while.
oh, I hope they bring the rest of the Ginyus back. That would be a good
Super
side
cool.
arc or something.
I'm from Space Australia.
Yeah. And then I just wanted to we did a review of the season a while back, and I said that I thought the Murabito A, Villager A, was going to be a good anime, and that I thought the hero giving up on hearing one was maybe a bit generic. I want to just switch that because
Yes, yeah.
it turned out that it was completely the opposite way around.
You
Villager
might not have
A
noticed,
turned to
but
be
when you were
the more
talking about
generic harem kind of style power fantasy thing.
Murabito
And,
A, I was ignoring it, and when you were, well, not ignoring it, I was saying it's an okay one.
and I'm
I'm
quitting
on
heroing
Hearing.
is
It's the one I was trying to suggest.
starts off as that weird generic kind of anime thing, right? But then it
does.
actually
It does
has a
start out
really
quite
good
generic.
kind of deep backstory. Which
We almost slice of life towards the middle end of it, so it's so great.
so the
in my
first
opinion.
4 episodes are just these like weird 4 like little chapters that make it seem like your classic slice of life kind
Generic
of thing,
power.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
But I think Author Kun was trying to slide us in from a more generic thing into the story he wanted to tell.
I mean, I almost stopped watching it because of that, though. So obviously they did something right that I kept watching it, but
Well,
Yeah.
also I was trying to prod you to be like, hey, no, don't give up on this. It's good.
no, there is that as well. And actually, I started watching the Skull Knight thing, and
Oh,
it's
okay.
not as bad as I thought it would be. So
The beginning is not bad. It becomes trash. Trust me.
I'm sure it does, but it's not as bad as I thought it would be. So yeah,
Mm.
that's all I have to say. All right, let's jump straight into our main topic, which is the movie. Dylan, please introduce it.
I shall. It's Tanpopo. It's a 1985 Japanese
1985.
film, written and directed by Juzo Itami. It's described as a comedy. I would put it into the contemporary sort of camp of art house. And it stars, hold on one second, Nobuko Miyamoto as Tanpopo, Tsutomu Yamazaki as Goro, and it debuts Ken Watanabe as Gun.
Oh my god,
Right.
it debuted Ken Watanabe.
No, I was wondering because I didn't really look up the characters to be honest, but I was wondering who that was. I was like, I know this guy. Why is he
Yeah,
so familiar?
it was one of Ken Watanabe's debut films. So yeah, it's just to set the context here. Tanpopo on Rotten Tomatoes has 100% score from critics and a 93% score from the audience. Over
Of the five
5,000.
people who've watched today, I surmise, right?
Well, that's over 5,000 ratings for above 93%.
Wow.
So we'll get into it. I think it's a very specific film for a specific camp of aficionados.
I would like to clarify the genre for anyone who's confused. So it's about a noodle shop, basically.
Correct.
And it's about a ramen noodle shop because the main character wears a cowboy outfit. And I'll explain that because it's supposed to be a spaghetti western, but it happens in
Yes.
Japan. So it's therefore a ramen western, right? A noodle western. I don't know how you really translate that. That's the joke. That's why the main character is dressed as like a John Wayne lookalike.
100% accurate.
And it happened before the bubble burst in Japan. If anyone's not familiar with that, Japan was sort of on a trajectory to overtake America as maybe the most powerful economy in the world for a while. Obviously, Japan just didn't have enough people, and people stopped having children, so the economy kind of ground to a halt after a while. But this was towards the end of that era of exponential growth Japan was going through, and that unparalleled rise in prosperity kind of produced a lot of surrealist art that there's a book called The End of History. I can't remember what the author's name is, but the idea is that the world had come to a point in history where war and the common kind of upsetting occurrences of the past had become so distant. He talks a lot about death being something that was so disconnected from everyday life because of modern medicine and everything that people had stopped really reacting the way the ancestors had reacted to things. And so we got these interesting new developments in art, which were less about kind of the emotions of life and more about these kind of surrealist, detached, philosophical points of view on the way life was sort of on sort of the artificial way that life was being translated into at that point in time. And that didn't last for very long, obviously, but that is part of this era of filmmaking.
Yeah,
it's art house in the original sense of very random things happening on screen that are meant to make you think about something, I suppose, is the polite way of putting it, but not necessarily related to a narrative that is ongoing. So that's the kind of genre you'd have to be into, surrealist fiction.
Yes,
and maybe what's it called? Stream of consciousness surrealist fiction.
Yeah,
if you're that sort of person, you will enjoy this.
100%.
For 99.9% of the world, this is not for you.
Yeah. I think we'll get into that at the end. I think I agree 100% with you there.
I think 85% of this movie is enjoyable by just about anyone off the street.
That's a high percentage. I think if you take the main storyline,
yes,
and ignore things that happen with upsetting usages of food and ingredients, I agree with you.
Those things stick out in your mind so much because they were so unexpected. But they were a total of about 40 seconds and maybe another 40 seconds of a 2-hour movie.
No. I mean, if it was just a few seconds, it would be forgivable, but these were minute-long scenes at least.
Yeah,
and they happen frequently.
And the
throughout.
thing is that they're just like so the contrast is so stark that it just hits you like a freight train. And you're going through this sort of rather sort of slightly comical, silly storyline of like trying to train up this noodle maker so that she can be sort of really prosperous in running her noodle store. But then you just get sort of sidelined by
Catfish sex, yes.
yeah, catfish sex, all sorts of interesting usages of food.
Slurping noodles.
The film really
Upsetting dentistry scenes scattered throughout.
although if you've ever been in that position, you can kind of understand it. but yes, it takes these little meandering side stories that have no connection to the main plot, right? And this is sort of the thing that you got to accept, that the concept of a plot in this movie is a very it's a very fluid and possibly absurdist one. In other words, does it really matter? And so it goes through these little side stories that are, they could be their own like micro short film,
Right.
in an artistic sense.
Yes,
the
no.
supermarket scene, for example, where the lady's busy squeezing all the food, and she's being chased by, like, that could almost be like, it could be like a strange advert, like a strange Japanese advert in a way, like right at the end where he just swats her hand when she's about to take something.
Yes.
I'm almost expecting him to like look towards the camera, hold up a product, and say, buy this for luxurious hair or something like that. But it's a ride.
It's a total ride.
It has lots of elements that I think either recur frequently in Japanese fiction or are directly stolen from this. I don't know which is which. There's a scene from this movie which deals with homeless people, I think. I think they're homeless people. I'm not entirely sure. But they're like the kind of lost people of Tokyo. I think it... I don't even know if it takes place in Tokyo, to be perfectly honest. Sometimes it seems it doesn't at all. And sometimes it's just a beach. A beast? Yes. A beach with like oyster shuckers kind of standing in the waves, right?
Staring, judging at the odd scene in front of them. Yes.
Bizarre scene happening in front of them, yeah. But so that's happening. And then there's this like Tokyo Godfathers, I think was the anime movie about these 4 hobos who find a child.
Yes, that's Tokyo Godfathers.
That kind of just seems perfectly related to this kind of weird like homeless scene that happened in this movie.
Yeah, which is one of my preferred scenes, was the scene where the homeless people basically they're discussing very gourmet
Exactly.
consumption,
That's
right?
about.
Where they'll go through back alleys and sort of steal really good vintages of alcohol that they're a whole 5 centimeters left of the bottle outside of a French restaurant, and drag it back, and now they're living the high life. And then
I always felt that scene called back to the other scene where the hyper wealthy guys were meeting like in a bank French restaurant type thing. And they all order the same food because they don't want to appear like
they don't know what they're doing.
Yes.
That's it. And then the one guy who isn't confident basically
just orders incredibly, but then it embarrasses the rest of them.
100%.
But I feel like that scene calls back from the hobo scene, because the hobos know about food. They are incredibly knowledgeable about food, and they love eating. They are eating the best food compared to these guys who are ordering so that they don't look different.
And by contrast, then they sneak into I think a fancy restaurant. Kitchen at midnight, right?
I think it was actually like a Navy ship or something.
It looked like something like that, right?
It looked like it, yeah, it did.
But it had like this fancy restaurant kind of kitchen in it.
Kitchen, mm-hmm.
And then they sneak in, make omelet rice, right?
Omelet rice.
The most sort of common food you can really think of, like a Japanese kind of comfort food.
They passion into it, and it looks great.
It does.
I mean, it is kind of like an art form, especially getting the right kind of like shape of the omelet and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And
But-
it shows the guy putting so much effort into it.
But
that he had to
it is
break
just
into
eggs
the
and
shell.
rice compared to
Yes.
like normal sort of.
Mechanically and
Eggs,
ingredient-wise,
rice, and
it's
ketchup.
very simple. And he
Yeah.
used ketchup, which is like
Which is
most
actually
chefs
what
will
is in it.
spit
So I mean,
some
he
chefs would
did like
spit at
this.
that, but
No,
he
no, no,
did it,
no. That's omelet rice in its purest form. You'd also use like ham as part of the ketchup rice kind of base. But
but that
it
goes on
was
to
done
show-
really skillfully.
the homeless people are eating like kings, and these wealthy guys are like losing out basically.
Yes, yeah.
They're all having sol and a salad or something like that.
Oh,
Or
and the
not
same
salad,
consomme soup.
consomme
They all
soup,
order the
no
same
salad.
thing.
So just to describe the plot is like this: there's a struggling noodle shop, in this sort of John Wayne character in a kind of like sort of Magnificent Seven kind of way. He comes in and rescues the village,
I was
so to
gonna
speak,
say.
right?
Yeah.
So this movie combines the Seven Samurai or Magnificent Seven,
Right.
Tombstone, and the Italian Job all into one, while telling me the story of a noodle shop.
It does. It does.
And that's fairly obvious as we get towards the end because they have to wrap up all of those other three movies
Yeah,
in ways that
the
make
end in
sense to
particular-
those movies and not to this movie, and specifically in that like scene where the guy is just shot for some reason. And there's-
The
Man in
weird
White.
wealthy guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
He is known as the Man in White.
So the man in white is a recurring character that comes up in this movie, but let's just talk about this movie from an overview perspective just quickly.
Okay.
So what I got from this movie is that passion and satisfaction are the true goals of life. Now, the one thing about this movie is that the main storyline makes it a very significant degree of sense, actually. It's like an okay movie if you follow the main storyline. Not great, but okay.
it's like Chef, right? Basically, it's that story.
What makes this movie is the vignettes, which also, if you're just trying to watch a movie, is also the most offensive part of this movie.
Yes.
As it breaks away from what seems to be a sensible storyline to give you this vignette about random things.
Yeah, there's like
But all of
there's
the
like
vignettes tie into the main theme of the story. Yes? Sorry?
there's like a steady kind of 1.5 hour movie in this movie, which is made 2.5 hours by all of the other like
the
Rashomon
vignette.
like.
So I
add-ons.
was going to say, some people might actually be offended or negative about the vignettes. But I think without the vignettes, this movie is a 7 out of 10, maybe even a 6 out of 10
It'd be
movie.
far more mediocre. Yeah. Far less-
Because it's just telling a story that's pretty well told, and like the themes that come through are okay, but like the subtleness of it comes out in the vignettes, which like assault you almost in trying to force you to think. And I think the most important vignette I got out of this was the one where the lady's trying to teach the other Japanese ladies how to eat noodles overseas.
yes.
And you must try to make no noise when you are eating your noodles. And you must take 3 or 4 noodles, wrap them up around your fork, put them in your mouth, and eat them quietly. And in the same room as them is a Caucasian male. He's totally a Westerner. He's not Japanese at all. And he's just shoveling noodles into his mouth and slurping like a crazy person. It's the loudest thing in the room.
And the thing is, it's an Italian or either French or Italian restaurant. I think it's an Italian restaurant, and she's trying
I
to
think it
be
was supposed to be Italian, yeah.
trying to be elitist in the sense that she's trying to take on shepherding and educating these people how more sophisticated at that time, that's the way they saw it. More sophisticated parts of the world would eat
these noodles.
right, the polite way, and it's completely countercultural to the culture of eating noodles in Japan because they use slurp quite a lot. There's a
And
lot to do with
slurping
that.
suggests that you're enjoying the dish. It's a sign of enjoyment.
Yeah, enjoying the dish. There's a lot that's said about bringing in air to sort of improve the flavor of the noodles as you're doing it, as well as cooling it down. There's a lot that people have to say in terms of the merits of slurping noodles. But,
I mean,
but it's
yeah.
funny how she goes on this long tirade and trying to educate them, and then this guy's sort of listening, and he's sort of nodding his head, and then eventually he just starts shoveling it in and
He starts
slurping
shoveling.
and going full on like, actually,
And
this is a
then
better way of having noodles.
all of the people in the room start slurping, including the lady who initially
Yeah.
was trying to be all dignified, just start slurping their food because it improves, once again, the focus of this movie, their passion and their satisfaction.
Mm.
And the way passion is displayed in this movie is a little bit weird whenever the man in white is involved, but all of the vignettes relate to passion and enjoyment.
Well, this is the thing. It takes almost like a non-judgmental tone over these certain things. So there are some scenes where food is used in a healthy context, right, or a healthier context. Where it's bringing people together. They're working hard to achieve a goal of producing a good bowl of ramen. They take. There's this massive collaboratory emphasis. But then it also non-judgmentally will throw in vignettes where food is used in, if not a
Different ways.
self-destructive manner, then a certainly a perversion of what you would consider healthy.
And then one where it straight out kills a woman is another one. I mean,
Yes.
the housewife cooking her last meal for the family. God, that was a grueling scene.
It was, but it also says a lot, right? Like, mom must slave in the kitchen regardless of how she's feeling. She's on her deathbed. She's lying there, and the husband comes in and, Skari Shiro, don't leave us, don't leave us. And she gets up and
Yeah, no, it's a terrible scene. And anyway. But yeah, there's also I just kind of wondered at the end of the movie where they're in the white restaurant set. Is that a sort of indication that everyone there is dead? That because none of this is particularly like a realistic version of events. I wondered if that is the progression from the hell in the beginning to the human world in the middle, and then we get like a heaven-like scene at the end.
Yeah.
That we're getting with this movie.
That, but I genuinely feel. Sorry, Dylan, carry on.
No, I was just going to say that being an art house film, that could be a very valid take on it, and I certainly think, because with these kinds of films, you can look at it through a certain I don't want to say lens, but you can look at it a certain way and then build meaning within that thread, right? And then you could take a different take on it and still build different meaning. So you could totally go down that line, and it does make sense what you're saying. There are a lot of those surrealist, dream-like moments within the main plot. And you're actually quite right. It did occur to me that this might be sort of the concept of having sort of attained
enlightenment, at least. Yeah, it's kind of the Buddhist insert into the Western.
Yeah, but definitely with the mortality theme within it.
Yeah.
Sorry, yes, you were saying?
So I was saying the entire movie is an allegory for him cooking her. Sorry, Cowboy Hat Man.
Goro.
I don't remember their names. I'm sorry. For Goro, walking up to this place, finding the noodles kind of disappointing, and then he comments upstairs that it seems very straightforward and innocent, but there's no kick to the dish, which is a direct allegory for her. Like how she's raising her son, how she's running her business, everything like that. And then through the movie, he adds things to this. And then also, once she picks up the passion for it, she starts doing uncivil things. She sneaks into a guy's restaurant to go spy at another chef's cooking. And it looks like she's going to get raped, but then it becomes he actually fulfills his promise to show her the secret of the other chef.
Thank goodness. But yes, just before you continue, I want to say that what you've just said works for the film as well, not just for the interaction between her and herself.
That's what I'm leading to.
Yeah.
Actually, because there's a little like nod to the audience or wink, wink to the audience in the middle of it. But I'll get there in a moment.
Sorry, go ahead.
And then she like pretends to be like a member of this other cooking thing and gets the recipe on how the guy makes his noodles. And she's stealing everything from everyone. But we're on her side because she's doing it to make her business a success. She's doing it with all of these criminal people. The guy that seemed to be like asking her to shut down the business so that he could basically take her. this guy that's like a driver for this other wealthy people, etc., etc. All of these like misfits that have come together to help her make the recipe right. But Goro is actually the chef here. He's molding her in the way he wants. He's forcing her to come out the way she wants. And at the end of the movie, I don't know if you guys noticed this. In the entire movie, we heard this message about 3 or 4 times. A true artisan looks at the bottom of the bowl. Because if they haven't finished everything in their bowl, he is not satisfied. Did you guys remember that at all?
Yes.
Yep.
And at the end of the movie, he looks at all of the people enjoying the servings and stuff. And then he looks back at her, and for the first time, she gives him some spice when she looks back at him. Every other time she says help when he looks. At the end of this movie, when it's the white stage, he looks at her and she does the I've got this kind of inflection.
There's also
And then he puts on his
Such a
hat
good observation. Sure, yes.
and walks out because his dish is complete.
Oh,
yeah.
that's good.
And just also notice it's the only time that everyone actually finished an entire bowl of ramen. Was that last year?
Yes. Also,
There's
everyone
like 4
walked-
grueling, just completely uncut versions of people eating ramen throughout this thing from beginning to end, like a whole bowl.
But
You
also,
just have to like bear through. And
There's
the
a little-
last one lasts a good 3 minutes as just everyone
3 minutes.
finishes.
But it's also so satisfying because they add in the like lighting increasing as
Yeah.
they are eating the noodles, and then when they start to suck the sauce, not sauce, sorry, the soup.
Yeah, yeah.
They get another light increase, as if like for the first time, the noodles and the soup have come together correctly. Because we've had these little revelations as she fixed up bits of it, but that last one was where we got the like full crescendo. But also, I wanted to say, in the middle of this movie, they did a little nudge, nudge, wink, wink at us, where he walks in as she gets her full uniform at last. And he goes, "It's amazing. You look like an actress." And then, like, film crew come in, they cover the place up, and then suddenly they're in a restaurant eating together. And she's dressed up as as an actress from a French film. Did you guys see that?
yes.
Yes.
No,
So,
they were
like,
talking
then
about that, yeah.
yeah. And then they were talking about how to make a dish come together, and she asked him, "Why are you helping me?" And he asked her, "Why are you trying so hard?" And I really can't help but feel like that's a direct nod to the audience. Hey guys, you're watching a film right now. Hey guys, I worked hard on making this film.
No,
There's more happening here. Hey guys.
So, I mean, being an art house movie, everything is a metaphor. So in the beginning, you see her as this plain person, kind of in the background of the scene. And in the middle of the movie, people are talking about how average she is, right? Average looking, average sort of action, personality, so on and so forth. And how the main character is the only one that sees anything in her. And at the end, she's talked about as being a film star. So that's her sort of progression from boring to interesting, I suppose.
But I also enjoyed the fact that the dish came to completion, and her son also had a better life.
Yeah.
Suddenly he was friends with the bullies.
Right.
The
Yeah.
building she was in was amazing. Her cooking was amazing. The way she handled customers was amazing. So we got this as the audience, complete satisfaction.
So
And the movie is all about passion and satisfaction.
what I'm not going to do is say let's rate this from 1 to 10. But what I am going to say is let's rate this from Space Odyssey 2001 to Blade Runner, where the middle ground would be like The Bicycle Thief, if we're talking about art house movies.
Oh my god. It
Now,
doesn't fall within that range for me.
well, I mean, let me start then. I'd say if, Space Odyssey is like a 1 and Blade Runner is a 10, and we're not talking about like, out of 10 for like just movies in general, but in like art house movies, that might be the common kind of conception, I suppose. This is maybe a 6 for me. It was interesting. I didn't really enjoy it that much, but it was thought-provoking at times. I just think it would have been very interesting in the 80s if you were Japanese. I think even at that time, if you were a kind of a Western critic of this, it would have been kind of very similar to movies that like Dali had made in the 40s, in the surrealist sense. And again, it's related to like Western stuff, so it seems quite derivative of that. It's interesting that some of those movies would have been Japanese, then made into Westerns, then come back here as like this ramen Western thing. So there's some interesting ideas. But if you want to see like a movie that's like a better, more interesting version of that sort of idea, then you just watch Star Wars. So I'd say 6 out of 10 for me. Upsetting, interesting, but ultimately something I'm not going to be thinking about very much in the future, I think. Except maybe that mother dying scene with the,
Let's go to
fried rice. Yeah.
And yeah,
Seeing is probably going to replay for me quite a lot.
What do you guys think?
I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. I fucking love this movie.
Sure.
And the fact that the vignettes tried to tell me 8 different ways about the centralized message of this movie and tried to force me to think when I would be like neutral gear just processing through a movie normally. I think this movie did a fantastic job of getting its message across. I think this movie did an even better job of trying to like just break the Japanese custom of like propriety before anything else. This was all passion and self-satisfaction. Fuck everything else. I loved it.
Nice. I am going to give this 6 out of 5 Amelies, seeing as though that's appropriate.
12 out of 10, okay.
Not in terms of how you like it, because I think with these kinds of movies, you've got to separate. I mean, you don't have to. You can say what your taste is, right? Because you can receive a lot from a film without necessarily enjoying it. And this is kind of the category that we're in. So I appreciate it for what it is. I would definitely recommend this to people who are art house connoisseurs. Right? I would say to them, look, if you want to be able to understand, if you haven't seen this before, see it, because it forms sort of a keystone part of that genre of cinema's history. You're certainly going to have a lot of movies since that time calling back to this movie, being influenced by it, paying homage to it, that type of thing. So go see it. If you are more of a mainstream person, or if you're more of a niche person in that, say you're into like fantasy, for example, but you don't like much else, or you're into superhero movies, but you don't like much else, stay away from it. It's probably not going to be for you unless you want to open and diversify your interests a bit. What I would like to say is this is the kind of movie that would be best watched with friends and then spoken about afterwards, because having chatted now, interestingly enough, and I'll go through this now, having chatted with you two about it, it changed how much I enjoyed that movie. This conversation changed how much I enjoyed that movie, because it's an intrinsic part, I think, of watching that film, is being able to get each other's takes and what different people took home, different components of it, and what sort of stood out for them. That for me is immensely satisfying, immensely stimulating for this kind of thing. And I would also like to point out, if you look back at this conversation from the beginning of us talking about Tanpopo, everything in the beginning is helter-skelter, because there's no way of really simply talking about the film, because it is just very chaotic and vignettes all over the place. And so the conversation was. Yes. But then slowly we started aligning a bit more, and you have that improvement, just like this dish is being prepared. And in Japan, they've got the word yukuri, which means slowly, and very often it's used in cooking to mean take your time in preparation. Take your time in the eating of the dish as well. You're enjoying it, you're savoring it, and that calls back to the first. I think it was the first scene, or the second scene, where the noodle master is teaching the apprentice how to eat noodles, and he's talking about how to actually save it. So they actually prime you as to how to handle the film. So yeah. Yeah.
As someone who has an art history degree,
Yes.
I'm seeing this very differently from you two, because I think a lot of the things you're seeing are and it's stimulating, as you say, Dylan, to have watched the movie about this and then discuss themes and topics and things like that. But if you're someone like me who has, as part of the education, watched dozens, if not hundreds of these sort of movies, this is not going to stand out for you in any meaningful way, unfortunately.
No.
It is one of the better Japanese versions of a surrealist movie. But it's not the best one.
So I would not call this the best one.
No.
But as someone who doesn't
would you
watch art
recommend?
house often, I would say that
There's another one about a director.
This is a Japanese one, hey?
It's like Superstar or something. I can't remember the name. Yeah. Also, most of them happen in the 80s because that's the era.
We can put that on the list. Excellent.
Oh dear God, I'm not watching that again.
What have you done, Chris? What have you done?
And Akira is actually maybe one of the better ones of these sort of Japanese style things, because it's not limited by a real life budget.
Sure.
But yeah, I think it's fun to talk about these sort of things with friends afterwards. I don't like watching these movies in a group, and I think that's mostly because I sat through like 5 years of art school having to do that every Friday in hot auditoriums.
So do you mean that you don't like watching it at the time of watching it with other people, or do you mean that you don't like watching it and then discussing it afterwards, like we're doing now?
I know I like discussing it. That's fun.
Okay, cool.
I don't like watching it with people because that's going to make me
Sure.
want to feel different things to fit into a group. Do you know what I mean?
That's a good point. Yeah.
So I'd rather feel whatever I'm innately going to feel about a movie by myself, especially if I need to understand how I feel about that movie.
Great. No, I like it. Yeah.
Although I think because I've had to watch these things and analyze them so much, it's not such a big deal. But I think you definitely can see a lot of people come out of a movie, and if all their friends have enjoyed that movie, they'll have a kind of social pressure to feel the same way about it.
Yeah, I understand.
So I'd rather not have any of that sort of pressure on me with a movie I have to analyze.
No, that's a good point. I'm with it.
Just as a note for anyone listening, which I don't think is the most important of things, but I just want to say it anyways. It was suggested that we try and watch this movie with a slightly altered mind state. I don't use
That was a joke.
I don't use anything external for that sort of thing. So I watched this movie post midnight on a day when I was tired, so that I could have the least thought possible and just take everything in and then think about it afterwards. And as you said, it is a stream of consciousness movie. And I think if my brain was fully engaged and running, I would not have enjoyed this movie. Because there's so much happening that it would have felt offensive. And like the breaks and stuff would have felt annoying and irritating and bad. But because I was in such a neutral state that I just wanted to see the thing and then deal with what it meant later, just absorbing it all and then digesting it really helped me for this. So if anyone wants to watch Tanpopo, try to do it exhausted.
No. With the Japanese have a word mushin, which is like with an empty heart.
Yes.
Which is without any expectations of anything. So if you can get into that state, you will actually enjoy Japanese culture a lot more, because all of the things that are tight and structured in Western culture are not applicable to a lot of Japanese forms of art and theater and film. And if you can just not think about that during Japanese cultural products like runtime, you do enjoy them more. It's difficult to do because I don't know. I mean, we've come to expect a lot of that really high quality kind of like Western storytelling things from the better movies that we've had over the last 20 years or so, which have been just so well produced and churned out by like companies like Marvel and so on and so forth.
I should probably watch
very hard to get out of that,
so that I can reset my expectations a bit then.
Ghibli is a good example of something you'll enjoy more if you don't think about it.
If you don't think about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's kind of the mindset I tried to get into before watching this movie, because I remember I enjoyed Ghibli movies significantly more. Princess Mononoke was a movie I actually bounced off of the first time I watched it.
Do you know the thing that you'll enjoy the most more is Japanese TV series that aren't about anything, that don't actually have a story line or a throughput of a plot. Your slice of life kind of things are just something you will be able to appreciate for whatever they are happening, whatever was happening in them at the current time, and that just makes them more enjoyable. I'd say that's the number one thing you'll enjoy more in Japanese culture. Well, they call it wabi-sabi, right? The bad and the good stuff are just things that happen at the same time, and you just need to accept what is there for what it is.
Whatever's happening.
And at the same time, you come to realize that everything in Japanese culture is so specifically intentional that wabi-sabi concept is so artificial that the appreciation for it is the concept itself. So if you can get into that frame of mind, you'll love this sort of stuff, I guess.
I would like to make a quick nod to a scene that stuck out with me, which is the vacuum cleaner scene at the restaurant. For those looking for humor in a movie that is labeled a comedy, which is probably not something that you should take seriously, ironically, this was one of the funniest parts for me because it relies heavily on absurdist humor, and that was the section that was probably the funniest for me.
There was a point where I thought this was going to be a Tarantino-like movie when we were first introduced to the bums, and that guy gave his diatribe about the wine that he had stolen.
Yes.
I wish the whole movie was that. That would be amazing if it just cut from weird, unrelated scene to scene that was just like that. And I think actually having a tight central plot that was interrupted by those sort of scenes detracted from it for me. I wish it was more like What's in the Box? What's that movie? The Tarantino
Seven.
movie. Sorry?
What's in the Box is from Seven.
No, it's not.
One of the references to that is.
What's the most famous Quentin Tarantino movie? What's it called?
You're talking about What's in the Suitcase, my friend. Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction. Thank you. Yeah.
What's in the Box is definitely a Seven reference.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I think it's What's in the Suitcase then? Fine.
What's in the Suitcase? Yeah.
The golden suitcase thing. Yeah. Bruce Willis and all.
But yeah, I mean that's that is based on Rashomon, right? That sort of concept. So I guess it had been done by that point, but yeah. Anyway, that's how I feel about that.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll do a few more odd Japanese movies.
Hey.
I did have some thoughts about what to inflict on Dylan for making me watch this after this.
Vengeance.
I will remind you, I'm in the splash zone if we're going to have a bitch off.
Right.
So I would like to state my case that I hadn't watched it before I suggested it. I simply suggested it because it was mentioned and it is highly acclaimed.
Yeah.
So I got this fresh along with you guys. Hopefully I'm totally game to go watch more Japanese art house with you guys.
I must admit, after discussing this movie a little bit and finding that I found nothing disgusting or unusual about this, I am a tiny bit concerned that after watching Star Trek Picard a bit, I've lost all sense of taste.
Oh no.
So I don't know what that means precisely.
I found Picard more upsetting than this, but I wouldn't say it more distasteful than this.
Are you saying that Star Trek Picard is the virus that shall not be named equivalent for series?
I mean,
it destroys
genuinely
my sense of
feel-
smell.
I genuinely feel if you can make it through that show, what's all of this? This is nothing. I could watch Hostel right now without a problem. It's not worse than anything that happens in Picard.
It's great.
But nothing in Picard makes you feel right. That's why it's so bad. It's just
I don't know, watching Egypt getting dismantled while alive because we have to keep him alive.
right. I mean, that's
I don't
true.
know, man.
After that, though, you come to terms with the fact that this has nothing to do with the actual Star Trek universe or the characters that are actually in it. It's just fan fiction that Patrick Stewart, for some reason, got put in charge of. But, I mean, once you accept that, then it just becomes a kind of 0 out of 10 nothing product.
Indeed.
Whereas this
See,
is,
the problem is,
definitely not a 0 out of 10. And it does make you feel about things. So,
but remember you said the words, once you accept that.
I understand, yes. Yeah.
I have accepted everything now. Nothing can make me feel anymore.
Right, I guess.
And with that prospect in mind, this is a great movie.
I guess on that note, we'll come to the end of this discussion. And thank everyone for listening to our review of this 1985 movie, Dandelion, Tanpopo.
Thanks for joining us on the ride.
Ciao for now, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers.